Venezuela is home to the largest oil reserves in the world, even more than Saudi Arabia, but still face the largest social and political crisis in the world today. Let us understand why. Around the 10th century in ancient Venezuela, indigenous tribes discovered oil seeping through the land. The thick black fluid was used as medicine and to light lamps. Actual extraction, however, began much later. In 1922, a huge oil well was discovered. When they drilled inside, oil came gushing out in a jet, rising more than 40 meters high, and it took them more than 9 days to contain it. Foreign oil companies rushed to the country to be a part of all the action. The oil industry developed massively since then and soon began to overshadow the other sectors in the country. By 1928, Venezuela became the largest oil exporter in the world. The value of the Venezuelan currency increased rapidly, riding on the back of a single product, oil. But what about the other industries like agriculture? Their exports suffered tremendously as countries now found it very expensive to import from Venezuela. Global demand for oil kept on increasing, and during the Second World War, Venezuela were producing close to 1 million barrels per day. By 1950, the Middle East began exporting large amounts of oil as well. Soon supply overshot demand and oil prices began to fall. In response, the oil-producing nations of Venezuela, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and Kuwait met to decide on a future strategy. They formed OPEC in 1960, whose main aim was to bring oil prices back up to reasonable levels by regulating the supply. Export quotas were placed on member nations to keep a check on overproduction. Oil prices continued to fall and in 1970 had reached a price of $3.4 per barrel. War and international turmoil the following decade changed this. The 1973 Arab-Israeli War led to the Arab OPEC countries stopping trade with the United States and other nations in response to their support for Israel. Global oil prices shot up to $37 per barrel by 1980, and the Venezuelans quadrupled their revenues. The oil industry was nationalized and people rejoiced, but sadly not for long. The OPEC members began breaking their production quota promises and produced more oil to take advantage of the high prices. But demand was decreasing as the world economy was slowing down. This led to an immense oversupply or an oil glut, and prices crashed yet again. By 1986, oil prices had reached a low of $14 per barrel and did not see any significant recovery until 1999. Hugo Chavez came to power, and luck was on his side. Huge demand from developing nations such as India and China boosted global oil prices and gave him the funds needed to pursue his economic strategy. However, these strategies proved to be very unproductive in the long run. He began funding social programs with oil money, which led to huge overspending. When he fell short, he borrowed heavily. His successor, Nicolas Maduro, followed in his footsteps. Government regulations, takeovers, corruption, and restriction on imports led to a hostile business environment and the death of private companies here. Oil prices have been falling since 2014, and Venezuela is facing one of the largest social crises in the world today. The inflation rate here is the highest in the world, and the country is heavily debt-ridden. People have money, but stores remain empty. There's a huge shortage of food, medicine, and other daily supplies, making many resort to looting. Crime rates have gone up, and the country is notorious for its homicides. The boon of the 20s has turned into a bane today. In the face of fluctuating oil prices, should the country shift its focus to other industries as well?